Good afternoon. Well, we have had a very productive and strong week at the UN. You saw the United States had a very strong presence with the President, the Vice President, many members of the national security team, as well as his economic team. The United States was out in full force, and I think the UN felt it, but I think it was extremely productive. You look at the beginning of the week, and we started with UN reform. You had the President and the Secretary General rolling out massive reforms for the UN. What was extraordinary was we had 130 countries that have now signed on to that reform. That's over 2/3 of the General Assembly, which is who is going to vote on this at the end. So that was a great start to the week. Then you saw the President's address to the General Assembly, and I think it showed the strength of the United States, but it also asked the world to come together, and it asked all the countries to come together as we fight these rogue regimes, and mainly North Korea and Iran. And I think what you saw were a lot of countries responded. They were very positive to the speech. They appreciated how blunt and honest he was. I think that's been the overall theme from the international community this week, is how straightforward he was and how refreshing it was as they heard him speak. We also today met with our allies, Japan and South Korea. Obviously a lot to talk about with North Korea, and so we had good conversations with them, and the President reassured, obviously, Japan and South Korea, but they also talked about strategies going forward for North Korea. On Iran, that was a topic of conversation throughout the week. I think everyone was talking about the destabilizing activities that they continue to do throughout the Middle East, whether it's in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and the list goes on. So it is something that we will continue to talk about and continue to move forward to make sure that we're stopping any of their reckless behavior as well. We also co-hosted a meeting with Secretary Boris Johnson, as well as the Dutch Foreign Minister Bert Koenders, on human rights reform, and really talked about the fact that it needed to be representative of its name. We have a lot of bad actors on that council. Both the President and the Vice President spoke about it in their speeches, and the need to see better quality countries that are on that council in order for it to be effective, and obviously for the United States to stay on it. If we don't see changes in the Human Rights Council, we'll continue to advocate for human rights, but we'll do it on our own if we have to. And then the Vice President attended a Security Council meeting yesterday on peacekeeping reform. We have made great progress this past several months in terms of reforming peacekeeping so that it's actually going towards a political solution. It's transparent, it's accountable, but we're also giving the troops the equipment they need and the ability to be trained in order to do their jobs. And so we're just seeing smarter peacekeeping, and I think that all came together in the peacekeeping reform vote that we had yesterday. One of the topics that everyone had to talk about this week and all had an opinion on was Burma. And as we're dealing with the crisis in Burma and we're seeing how much migration has taken place from the Rohingyas going out of Burma, every country is concerned. They're concerned that the military continues to be aggressive, and they're concerned that the government continues to be in denial. And so I think you'll continue to see the international community talk about that. I think you will only see them get more active on that as we go forward. And finally, today the Security Council took a great step forward. It was a measure that I think the international community had been working on a long time. We certainly worked with our British friends on it, and that was ISIS accountability in Iraq. If you look at the fact that there have been massive mass graves, there have been all types of terrible conducts to women and girls in those areas, whether it's what's happened with the Yazidis or the Christians or the Sunni and Shia Muslims. What we now have is a part of the UN body that's going to be able to go in there and actually collect evidence and make sure that it can be used in trials so that the victims finally have their say and get their day in court. So, or at least their families do if they've lost loved ones. So that was a big day for the Security Council today. And with that, there was obviously a lot more. I think the President met with multiple countries. There were lots of bilats. There was a lot of talk and planning and productivity. But overall, we can say it was a solid week at the UN this week, and it was highly successful. But with that, I'll answer any of your questions.